So welcome and thank you for joining us to Where is My Place? Tips for Navigating the Job Market, presented by Dr. Kerry Byrnes-Loinette of Collin College. Dr. Byrnes-Loinette teaches several foundational courses in addition to serving on assessment, curriculum, and shared governance committees. Her work has been published in Communication, Education, Communication Teacher, and Communication Research Reports. She is also a textbook co-author. Communicating in Your Personal, Professional, and Public Lives is published by Kendall Hunt. Without further ado, please welcome Dr. Kerry Byrnes-Loinette presenting Where is My Place? Tips for Navigating.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Good morning. It's nice to be with you, and it was really nice to go around the room and listen to your stories. I'll admit that I was surprised to be asked by NCA to give this kind of presentation. Because when I finished my PhD back in 2010, I was sort of hyper-focused on getting a job. So I applied to jobs much like you currently are all over. We weren't geographically bound. It was get job, need job, hyper-focus. And I think that fall into that kind of trap without thinking through, perhaps, at least I did, well, what happens if I get a certain type of job? And so while things worked out well for me, that I ended up getting a job that really does speak to me, I don't advise kind of this like uninformed path for you. And so this talk is truly inspired by questions I wish I'd asked and I should have thought of sooner during this application and interview process. So with that, I'm going to go over 3 large areas for you today, and those include understanding your preferences for employment, understanding job descriptions, and then preparing for those job interviews. And throughout my discussion today, I've tried to make things a little bit more scintillating for you at 9:30 in the morning, some silly memes. So one of the things that I didn't fully understand was this preference for employment. Now, you and I both know that there are 3 basic areas of any job: teaching, research, and service. To that end, though, what is the ability that you're applying to allow you to do those 3 things? What are they emphasizing? I think it's too simple to say that if I apply to a job at an R1 institution, the expectation is research. Well, what does that mean? How many times? What counts as research? What counts as publications versus peer review? Which holds more weight? What helps then in terms of professional presentations, invited talks? Is this an institution that supports my chosen methodology? Do they have the resources in place then to allow not only that methodology to happen, but to advance that methodology in terms of what we're going to do? Collin College is a 2-year institution, and I'll tell you a bit more about the community college life here in just a moment. But obviously then my emphasis is in teaching. And so I knew that I was going to teach a lot. That is this. So to teach a lot then for the community college professor is a 5-5 load. And that is pretty just standard. Now, to teach 5-5 is one thing. But the modality, you and I both know, we have shifted, pivoted, and had to move quickly to all sorts of different modalities. And I think we need to be cognizant of the effort that includes. And so then when you're looking at these kinds of jobs and places to apply, what are the modalities that you would have to be teaching in? Because it's no longer just face-to-face. And we have hybrid and blended and synchronous and asynchronous dual credit students are something that we deal with quite a bit at the 2-year institution as well. And all of this influences your chosen pedagogical strategies. So then understanding the amount of teaching. Finally then service. I jokingly say that, do you remember the Just Say No campaign 100 years ago? And Nancy Reagan was like, no, just say no. And I was like, well, Nancy Reagan clearly did not land in my ability to say no, because I say yes to every service opportunity, which is really beautiful, right? Then you become the person that people can count on, but then you become the person who's overworked, who's doing far too much service without any paid sort of compensation. And so at my institution, service is absolutely a component of what we do, but the only thing you're getting is the balance between these three. And then what you can't see down here at the very bottom, underneath my closed captioning. Now, I am going to offer you a controversial statement. In thinking about preparing for today's talk, I absolutely thought about getting a job in the Academy. But what if? The Academy. But what if you don't? What? And I think that that's a really controversial idea here at a convention where we're celebrating all things about what we do. But let's be serious. The skill set that you leave your institutions with are transferable, translatable. It's what we tell our undergrads. You have all of these skills that prepare you for a variety of positions. And so challenging yourself to take a pause and think, is the Academy, this institution, really where I see me and want to be? And allowing yourself, I think, the space to say, it's okay if it's not. So things like research specialists at nonprofit institutions, speakers, speaker coaching, or consultants, we are prepared and able to do all of those things. And so then understanding your preferences for employment, I think, it's directly to how you read a job description. I love the beauty of a well-crafted, carefully curated job description. You know that people painstakingly put keywords and phrases in there to create a certain appeal and image to gather candidates, and rightfully so. However, in thinking about the job description, I did a little digging in terms of like red flag phrases. Collin College is in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And I listen to our local sports, and they do this segment called Count the Red Flags. And one of the newscasters will read a popular press story, from CNN or whatever. And he'll start reading the title, and then the buddy goes, red flag, red flag, red flag. And so it's with that idea in mind that in thinking about job descriptions, we need to look for the red flags. And so I've given you here some phrases that... This is retrieved from PR Daily. It's an outlet of Reagan Communications. It's for public relations professionals and journalists. And they said that there's 6 wordings that are red flags to potential candidates. Fast-paced environment. Which, I mean, how many times have we seen this kind of language? Now, you may be more likely to see this kind of language if you do choose a non-academic based job, and that's certainly fine, like we were just talking about. But these kinds of words suggest to us a particular type of work environment. Because fast-paced, like a family, fun-loving, sound great. Things change quickly and you can be adaptable. Or is it that we're short-staffed? And that bleeds then into the overall content idea. So this website dedicated to helping people create their brand, and I love that language. The vague job description. And so they say, if the employer cannot describe what the job entails, how will that person or that organization operate as someone from a managerial perspective, as someone who's in charge? It suggests that they are unfocused, that the job lacks structured goals, and that can really make things like, well, how am I evaluated from a performance perspective, really difficult to understand. So if they're using vague, ambiguous, kinds of unclear language, it would be, I think, okay for you to say, hey, I read this. Can you tell me more about what it means once you're in an interview type of situation? I love the too many requirements look. The article states there are tons of basic qualifications. This indicates that the employer truly has no clue what they're seeking or what it actually takes on. And I think sometimes we see this in our job postings because Our universities do need an individual who can teach a lot of different things. But if you're starting to notice that they are asking you to teach every single thing, I can't be good at every single thing. So what is it that you truly need? This last one then, poor work-life balance. I love this. In the article, they say, cleverly disguised references to a company's poor work-life balance are rampant in job descriptions. I read that and I was like, tell me more. They said it's common for job descriptions to list flexibility, but if flexibility is overemphasized in the job description and repeated throughout, and they make references to like able to change directions quickly, agile, nimble, it may be signs of chaos in the workplace. Other sketchy phrases, having the ability to able to handle highly stressful environments, could be indicators of being short-staffed or that the work doesn't quite value the blend of work and life and them having certain kinds of distinctions. And so now that you have an understanding for your own employees' job interviews, I think you are going to now be able to get yourself ready for an interview because you've carefully crafted your materials to speak to some of the instances that have come up already. And so as you prepare for your job interviews, and I really liked this meme. I think it's so funny. And I really liked this meme. I think it's so funny. This is obviously a joke for a certain population, but at the job interview, can you perform under pressure? I don't know if I know all the lyrics, but here goes nothing. The song Under Pressure. Like I said, it's a joke for a certain population, okay? For interviews. Like I told you previously, Collin College is a 2-year institution situated in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And I've been there as a full-time faculty member for 13 years. So you could say I haven't job hunted recently. And I have, but my job currently offers a lot of autonomy. Flexibility, and pretty decent pay. So I'm not going to go. In terms of interviewing, though, there are some things that I think we need to be aware of. Now, certainly you are going to do your due diligence and look at the website. That is job hunting 101, and you already know that. Something that I didn't quite understand, though, is, guys, there are other sources available to us. And it's not just their website. And so I would encourage you to move past that and do a Google search for what the popular press has to say about your mission. And if you are someone who reads the Chronicle or other sources like Fire, you may notice that Collin College has come under recent scrutiny in some articles in the popular press being labeled as the epicenter of censorship in Texas. We have censorship in Texas. We have had some situations where professors have been fired for exercising their First Amendment rights. Recently, then, 2 of those individuals have been restated at the college. You don't know that if you stopped your search at our website, though. And so I think it's important to do your due diligence. Other sources saying about the place that you're I totally want to interview there. Do you? And then that's a careful distinction that you get to make. So we've been in the popular press. So look for any sort of discrepancies in information versus in between the 2 sources. Are you finding inconsistencies on the website? Oftentimes the website is updated very much after the fact, and so you don't know things like the reporting structure, but that's then helpful information that you take into the interview with you. One of the things that I think is important is asking about stability in the administration. Because you'll get on that website, you'll retrieve information about who's in leadership, but things like how long that person has been in leadership or what the turnover was is important. Collin College is very fiscally sound, and while we might fire people for making choices about what they say, we have opened 5 new locations, and we serve over 50,000 students. We're a robust institution. I tell you that because, though, what's happened as a result of new campuses is new leadership. and that sometimes faculty are being asked to getting new associate deans that I report to every couple of years is chaotic. So asking then things like, what is the expected, because we're forecasting, right? What is the expected sort of relationship between the associate dean and you, or dean, the reporting structure, whatever that looks like. We don't have chairs at my school. So who do I report to? Is it anticipated that that would change in the near future as colleges grow or colleges don't grow, right? So many of us are getting lower enrollment across the nation. So switching department chairs, switching deans. This last idea is about decision-making input. So how much say do you get in making those decisions regarding classes and scheduling? Now, the upside to having a new associate dean that I report to is that he has a lot of questions about how do you guys do scheduling? And I was like, this is my moment. Well, I like to teach these classes and at these times, and that's typically what I get. So, and then I could really craft a schedule that meets my family needs and demands. But that's a luxury. And then Collin typically rolls over the schedule. Obviously, we're responsive to student need, but we roll over the schedule. So this fall moment we're having will be the fall moment that I'll have next fall. Remember, then, get to have a say in the classes that they're bringing you in to teach. All of this, then, in terms of understanding your preferences, reading those job descriptions, and then asking some potentially difficult questions during a job interview. It makes me think about this process, and it's not insurmountable. It's difficult, sure. I have 3.5-year-old twins, and so they are very much into exerting their independence, right? And saying, no, mama, I do it. And I'm like, oh, here we go again. And I think about the job search process as kind of this like, no, I do it. You are exerting your independence. And yes, it can be tricky, but a phrase that we use in my house is that we can do hard things. And you too can do hard things, like finding the job that best fits you and your specific needs and situations. And I wish you nothing but luck during what could only be described as an interesting process.